Cold has ended more wars than bullets ever could. That's not hype, that's history. In World War II, freezing temperatures crippled armies, shattered morale, and quietly killed men long before the enemy ever showed up. And buried inside that brutal reality was an unglamorous, almost laughable material that outperformed heavy wool blankets, saved lives, and vanished from popular memory. Before we get into it, if you value real history that actually teaches survival lessons you can still use today, hit subscribe now so you don't miss the next hidden code history forgot. This wasn't high-tech. It wasn't secret metal. It didn't come from a lab. It came from the most ordinary place imaginable. Paper. Not maps, not documents, plain paper, newspaper, cardboard, layered cellulose, the same stuff people wrapped fish in back home. And yet, on frozen fronts where temperatures dropped low enough to snap rifle bolts and freeze breath midair, this humble material quietly outperformed blankets and coats that were supposed to do the job. Blankets failed because they compressed. Wool looks thick, but once you lie on it or strap it under gear, the air gets squeezed out. And without trapped air, insulation dies. Paper, when layered properly, refused to collapse. Crumpled sheets trapped pockets of still air like a maze, creating a thermal barrier that stayed effective even under pressure. Soldiers learned this the hard way, and then they learned it fast. Field manuals didn't advertise it. Supply chains didn't plan for it. But soldiers passed the knowledge like contraband, stuffed newspapers into jackets, line boots with paper, wrap legs, torsos, even helmets, cardboard under uniforms, paper between layers of fabric. It wasn't pretty. It was survival. Why paper worked better than blankets comes down to physics, not comfort. Heat loss happens when warm air escapes and cold air replaces it. Paper, especially when crumpled or layered, traps air in small pockets that don't circulate. Blankets rely on loft, which disappears under weight. Paper keeps its structure. Even soaked paper, when layered thick enough, retained surprising insulation because it slowed airflow. It didn't need to be dry to work. It needed to be dense. This mattered most during forced marches and static positions. Soldiers sleeping in trenches, foxholes, or improvised shelters didn't need softness. They needed to stay alive until morning. Paper insulation reduced heat loss through contact with frozen ground better than wool ever could. That single detail meant fewer cases of trench foot, frostbite, and hypothermia. Boots were a battlefield nightmare. Leather stiffened like stone. Socks froze. Feet went numb. Soldiers began stuffing paper into boots, not for padding, but to block heat loss. The paper absorbed moisture, slowed evaporation, and created a buffer between skin and cold leather. It was replaced daily if possible. When it wasn't, soldiers dried it by fire and reused it. Ugly but effective. Paper also solved a problem blankets never could. Weight. Blankets were heavy. Soldiers already carried weapons, ammo, food, and gear. Paper added insulation without adding meaningful weight. It could be scavenged anywhere. Villages, abandoned buildings, supply crates. It didn't need approval. It didn't need transport. It didn't need explanation. This wasn't limited to one army or one front. Wherever cold became the real enemy, paper showed up. Lining jackets, padding shelters, insulating walls, even used between layers of tents or under sleeping positions to block ground chill. Engineers used layered paper and cardboard inside temporary structures because it worked fast and required zero specialized tools. You know, the genius of paper insulation was speed. A shelter could be upgraded in just minutes. Tier paper, crumple it, layer it, done. No stitching, no tailoring, no waiting. In combat, speed is, well, everything. What makes this story even more powerful is, honestly, how completely it vanished after the war. Modern survival culture talks endlessly about thermal blankets, synthetic fibers, and all kinds of high-tech insulation. But the principle hasn't changed. Trapped air is king. Structure beats thickness. Compression kills warmth. WWII soldiers didn't have marketing. They had frozen fingers and dead friends. And yeah, they learned what actually worked. There's swagger in that knowledge. Because it wasn't theoretical, it was tested in the worst conditions humans have ever endured. Paper insulation didn't look heroic. You wouldn't pose for photos wearing it, but it quietly kept people alive while better-looking gear failed. That's the real survival lesson history keeps trying to teach us. Function beats fashion every time. Even today, disaster shelters, emergency insulation, and, improvised survival setups still use the same principle. Layered paper, cardboard barriers, air gaps. The technology didn't really evolve because, honestly, it didn't need to. We just sort of forgot it because it wasn't shiny. History's survival code exists to bring these lessons back into the light. Not nostalgia, not trivia. Real-world knowledge earned the hard way. This forgotten insulator wasn't just a footnote. It was a quiet edge that, meant the difference between waking up and not waking up at all. Cold doesn't care about your gear label. It cares about physics. We proved that beyond argument, plain and simple. If this opened your eyes, share it with someone who thinks survival is all gadgets and no grit. And hey, subscribe to History's Survival Code because the past still has receipts, and we're just getting started.